The story kicks off with a high-stakes operation involving a specialized DEA task force. A veteran officer named Tony is in the convoy along with his partner, Ivan. These two guys share a real tight bond and consider each other brothers. During the drive to the hit, Ivan shares the news that he's going to be a father. Tony is visibly moved by the talk and promises Ivan that the day the kid is born is going to be a great day. Soon after, the crew reaches the target, which is a high-level drug house. Tony decides to keep Ivan safe by telling him to stay with the perimeter team while Tony leads the raid inside the joint. The DEA team moves with precision, clearing various rooms and rounding up the suspects. On the top floor, they find the kingpin and an accountant right in the middle of a major transaction. As Tony moves in to make the collar, he misses a critical detail about a nearby bodyguard. This guy stays unnervingly calm and professional even with federal agents in his face. In a sudden blur of violence, the bodyguard manages to disarm Tony and opens fire on the law enforcement crew. The killer uses the chaos to slip away and head toward the exit of the building. Outside, Ivan is on the horn with his wife when the bodyguard suddenly pops out of the house. Before Ivan can even react to the threat, the killer guns him down and vanishes into the night. Tony rushes out of the building only to find his best friend has been taken out. He realizes that Ivan is never going to get the chance to meet his unborn kid. This loss leaves Tony consumed by grief and a deep need to settle the score. Meanwhile, the story introduces Nick, a guy living a modest life on a boat. While he looks like an ordinary retiree, Nick's got a history written in blood as a former special ops assassin. He was once known as the government's most lethal black warrant operator and a master sniper. His old contact, Francis, shows up at the boat to offer Nick a new gig. The government needs a specialist to handle a threat that the regular cops can't touch. Nick initially says no to the offer, claiming he's too old and his life as a hitter is over. However, Francis knows how to pull Nick's strings by mentioning his family's money trouble. Nick is currently broke, and his loved ones are struggling to make ends meet. Francis offers a deal involving one last blacklist of targets. The list has the names of dangerous drug lords who are plotting to collapse the American economy. Francis explains that if Nick cleans the slate, his family will be set for life. Nick reviews the list, finds his focus, and agrees to take the job.
This one?
That's Mustafar. We have confirmation that they have a cargo shipment coming into Mexico. Come on, buddy, you can do this. What do you say?
Remember this, I am in command.
Back at the DEA, Tony has become a ghost of his former self because of the loss of Ivan. His colleagues recognize that he's no longer just looking for a criminal, but a way to balance the scales for his partner. Tony's boss sees his state of mind and suggests he take some time off. Tony refuses to be benched, believing that finishing the job is the only way he can heal. His resolve gets even harder when Ivan's widow visits the office. She gives Tony a final request, asking him to never let the guy who killed her husband breathe again. The DEA team turns their attention toward the drug dealer they pinched during the initial raid. They believe he's a small piece of a much bigger puzzle involving a national threat. The dealer is arrogant and claims his boss is more powerful than anyone they've faced. He mentions a plan that's going to change the country forever but refuses to talk for free. The dealer demands a 5-star hotel, full immunity, and luxury treatment before sharing the info. Tony's boss reluctantly goes along with the terms to move the investigation forward.
You want some water?
Perrier Pellegrino, something like that. I don't trust the water here.
Tony is disgusted by the setup, as he doesn't trust a criminal who negotiates while Ivan's blood is still fresh. On the other side of town, Nick starts preparing for his first target. He preps his vintage weapons with the steady hands of a professional craftsman. To stay invisible, Nick changes his plates and shows up at the hotel disguised as a harmless tourist. He stops for a coconut water to keep his cover while hiding a high-caliber rifle in a golf bag. He eventually moves to the roof of a nearby building to set up his sniper nest. Inside the hotel, the dealer is enjoying a massage and thinks he's safe. Tony walks into the room and cuts the session short, telling the dealer the vacation is over. The DEA team leads the dealer out to a car while surrounded by security. As soon as the dealer steps into the open, a single bullet from Nick's rifle cracks through the air. The shot is perfect, hitting the dealer in the head and dropping him instantly. Panic breaks out among the DEA agents as they struggle to figure out where the gunfire came from. Tony's instincts are sharp, and he quickly spots the likely vantage point. He sprints toward the building, but Nick is already walking away from the scene. Because Nick looks like a frail old man, the cops ignore him as he walks right past them. Tony meets up with his boss to talk about what went down at the hotel, and they realize their only solid lead is now room temperature. Frustrated that the trail went cold, they decide to pivot their focus toward the dealer's accountant. The DEA sets up a high-tech surveillance operation to monitor every move the guy makes. While they can see him clear as day, they can't hear a single word of his private conversation. To get the full picture of the master plan, Tony figures out he needs to plant a microphone inside a high-security VIP lounge. He quickly realizes there's no way he's getting into that restricted area on his own. During his stakeout, he spots a woman named Mina and identifies her as the key to getting the access he needs. Tony decides that walking right up to her won't work, so he starts tailing her to find an opening. Mina is looking over her shoulder and ignores Tony's attempts to get close. Eventually, Tony has to show his hand and reveals that he's a federal agent. He explains to her that some real bad news characters are using her workplace to plot a national catastrophe. He asks her to plant a bug in a restricted VIP suite, which scares Mina half to death. She's worried that getting caught means losing her job or her life, but Tony's conviction eventually wins her over. Mina agrees to be Tony's inside specialist and successfully plants the bug while Tony watches the CCTV footage from a surveillance van. With the audio finally live, the DEA identifies their big fish as Hussein bin Fari, a global arms dealer and narco-terrorist. Through the mic, they hear Hussein talking about a terrifying master plan involving a specialized machine. He's hired a scientist to build a device that can collapse the whole American power grid and cause total economic ruin. Tony isn't the only one keeping tabs on the suite, because Nick has also moved into position nearby. Disguised with a simple cap and using the emergency exits, Nick enters the hotel like a ghost. Just as Hussein is discussing the final phase of his digital apocalypse, Nick strikes. In a blur of professional violence, he clears the room of guards and associates, leaving nothing but bodies behind. Tony hears the lead flying through the microphone and sprints toward the hotel room, but he's a day late and $1 short. Hussein and his lead scientist manage to slip out a back exit just seconds before Nick could get his hands on them. When Tony bursts into the room, he finds a total slaughterhouse and is completely baffled. He starts wondering who this ghost is that's taking out the world's most dangerous men before the law can even touch them. The next morning, the fallout from the hotel hit starts to landing, and Mina finds herself out of a job. Meanwhile, in a hidden bunker, Hussein is losing his cool with how the weapon is coming along. He demands the immediate destruction of America, but the scientist warns that the final parts are going to cost him. The scientist wants $50 million to finish the machine, and Hussein agrees to the price without blinking. Tony's investigation leads him to an elite party hosted by Hussein's niece, Rashida. He infiltrates the bash and tries to charm Rashida into giving up where her uncle is hiding. Rashida claims that Hussein is a shadow who comes and goes as he pleases. However, Hussein is actually watching the party from a secure room on the security camera. Standing right next to Hussein is the same bodyguard who took out Ivan at the start of the job. The bodyguard recognizes Tony instantly and warns Hussein that he's a DEA agent and a real threat. Hussein's order is simple: kill Tony and everyone else who knows they even exist. As Tony scans the crowd, he spots a familiar face in the distance. He sees the same old man he's noticed at every major crime scene and realizes the tourist is actually the hitter. He rushes to snag Nick, but the older man vanishes into the night again. In the chaos of the party, Tony also spots Mina, who's working the event as a chef. Tony refuses to let the mystery of the old man go and starts tailing him through the city. Despite Nick's clever moves to shake him, Tony's specialized training pays off. He eventually corners the man, but when the assassin turns around, Tony's world stops.
Where you going?
The legendary assassin he's been hunting is actually Nick, his own father. Years ago, Nick vanished after Tony's mother died, leaving Tony to look out for himself. On Nick's boat, Tony demands the truth, with a lifetime of anger finally boiling over. Nick finally breaks his silence and reveals that he was a black warrant operator for the government. He explains that his line of work made enemies all over the world, and those enemies were the ones who murdered Tony's mother. Nick realized that as long as he stayed anywhere near his son, Tony would always have a target on his back. Nick breaks it down, explaining that his disappearance wasn't about being a coward, but was a necessary measurement to make sure Tony could actually have a future. He tells his son that if Tony were standing in his shoes, he would have made the same call to save his kid. Looking at the man who gave up everything, including his relationship with his own son, just to keep him breathing, Tony finally gets the weight of the burden Nick has been carrying all these years. They both realize they're specialists working toward the same exact goal, which is putting Hussein bin Fari in the ground.
Tony? Yeah, sure.
While Tony is out for justice for his partner, Nick is looking to clear his blacklist and keep the country safe from this cyber-terrorist threat. As Tony gets ready to head off the boat, Nick hands him a clean, untraceable cell phone. Nick tells his kid to hit up that specific number if he ever needs the ghost to show up. But before the father and son can even get their ducks in a row for their next move, The enemy makes a move first. Hussein's bodyguard, the same professional who took out Ivan, ambushes the two of them. The bodyguard manages to strike Nick down and captures Tony before the veteran sniper can even recover from the hit. Meanwhile, inside a high-tech bunker, the clock is ticking on the whole terrorist plot. Hussein is fuming and demands the machine be fired up immediately to bring down the power grid. The scientist warns Hussein that the final calibration for the device is going to take at least another 24 hours. Hussein gets interrupted by the news that his crew has Tony in custody. He walks into the interrogation room and demands to know the identity of the ghost who wiped out his men back at the hotel. Tony is beaten up and bloodied, but he stays completely unbroken by the interrogation.
What is it that you want?
Yeah, I learned that from...
He looks Hussein right in the eye and laughs, telling him the man who killed his people isn't just some hitter, but he's Tony's father and he's coming for them. Hussein doesn't buy a word of it and thinks the idea of a father-son duo is a total joke. He tells his men to start the torture and to take it slow so they can get the truth. However, Hussein made a fatal mistake by underestimating the specialist.
They could be tracking him. It's for you.
Who is this?
Someone who knows you very well since Miami.
It's you. It all makes sense now.
How did you find out about my son? Let him go.
That's not going to happen.
That phone Nick gave to Tony wasn't just for making calls. It was a high-grade GPS beacon. Back at his ship, Nick comes to and immediately locks onto the signal coming from where they've got Tony. Nick isn't just a father looking for his son anymore. He's a professional hunter on a mission. Inside the bunker, the lights suddenly flicker and die, throwing the whole place into total darkness. Tony smiles through the pain because he knows exactly what that power failure means. He realizes the ghost has officially arrived to finish the job.
Of course not.
Nick infiltrates the bunker like a force of nature, moving through the shadows and leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. His precision is terrifying, as he takes out guards before they can even think about raising their weapon. Sensing the momentum has shifted, Hussein starts to panic. He grabs the scientist and takes off, leaving his remaining men behind to be slaughtered by the assassin. Nick reaches the interrogation room, cuts Tony loose from his restraints, and the two of them get out of there just as the authorities show up. The cops find a scene of total devastation inside the bunker, but they also manage to find the master machine. By seizing that device, the plan to collapse the American economy is officially dismantled. But the war isn't over for Tony and Nick yet. Tony gets a chilling call from Mina's phone. It's the bodyguard on the other end, and he reveals he's kidnapped Mina to use as leverage. He growls at Tony to get to his coordinates if he ever wants to see the girl alive again. Tony is ready to go charging in blindly to save an innocent life, but Nick stops him in his tracks. Nick warns him that acting on impulse is exactly what a professional hitter wants him to do.
No, I'm gonna kill that fucker.
And then what?
And then no.
Nick tells Tony that if he goes in solo, he's a dead man. He insists they handle things the specialist's way. Tony listens to his old man, and the two of them start coordinating a strategic approach for the rescue. Tony arrives at the location and walks into the lion's den to face the bodyguard head-on. The bodyguard reveals he's put the whole puzzle together and knows Nick is the one who's been clearing their ranks. He tells Tony to call the ghost so they can face each other once and for all. The standoff at the hideout is intense, and the bodyguard thinks he's got the upper hand. He's forgotten that Nick is a master of the long game and is likely already in position. From a concealed position, Nick fires a precision shot that hits the bodyguard right in the shoulder, disarming him instantly. Tony moves in immediately, and the two engage in a brutal hand-to-hand struggle until Nick arrives to close the distance. Nick puts a heater to the bodyguard's head, but he doesn't pull the trigger because he wants the location of Hussein bin Fari. Realizing his employer's empire is going down the drain, the bodyguard tries to negotiate for his freedom. The bodyguard offers to lead the duo to Hussein's private estate in exchange for $1 million and his release. Nick, acting like the ultimate pro, agrees to the deal, though a specialist always includes a hidden clause in those kinds of arrangements.
And then we just part ways, never see each other again, gentleman's agreement.
No. I will kill him.
Bin Fari's the target.
You know you killed my best friend, right? For no fucking reason.
Just fucking kill me now!
Now that kid's gotta grow up without a fucking dad.
Then fucking kill me! You have to! No. We need him.
Get up.
Meanwhile, at Hussein's luxury villa, the villain's true colors come out as his situation gets desperate. The scientist, who's now terrified and totally spent, demands his pay so he can finally get back to his family. Hussein proves he's a monster who refuses to pay for what he sees as a failure. Since the cops seized the power grid machine, Hussein views the scientist as a useless loose end. He pulls his piece and executes the scientist in cold blood. Hussein's niece, Rashida, witnesses the murder and finally understands that her uncle isn't some businessman, but a cold-blooded killer. The bodyguard eventually pulls up to the villa gates with Nick. To get past the elite security detail, they use a Trojan horse tactic. The bodyguard claims he's bagged Tony and brings a heavy body bag into the main hall. Once they're inside, the bag flies open and Tony emerges with his weapons drawn. The father and son duo unleash a storm of professional gunfire, moving through the room with perfect synchronization. They clear Hussein's elite guards in seconds as they push toward the target. Hussein, cornered and desperate, tries to lunge at Nick with a blade, but the veteran assassin doesn't hesitate. Nick delivers one final, definitive shot to Hussein's head, ending the threat to the American economy for good.
I don't have any bullets.
The bodyguard stands by greedily, demanding his promised $1 million. Nick looks at him and simply states that he knows exactly what the guy deserves. When the DEA and the police storm the villa later, they find a scene of total victory. They discover a body bag left behind, but it doesn't have a corpse inside. Inside the bag, the authorities find the bodyguard bound and gagged. Nick and Tony made sure the man responsible for Ivan's death would face a lifetime in a maximum security prison. As time goes by, the wounds from the conflict start to heal for everyone involved. Nick's ship is seen anchored in a peaceful harbor. For the first time in decades, Nick isn't a ghost anymore. He's taken on the role of a grandfather. Tony is there with Mina, and they're joined by Ivan's widow and her newborn kid. Tony delivers one last piece of good news regarding Ivan's legacy. It turns out Ivan had a massive specialist insurance policy that's going to make sure his kid is raised with everything they need.
My husband never told me he had $1 million life insurance. He made them pay. Can you imagine?
The family Ivan died to protect is finally safe and taken care of. As the sun sets, Tony's phone rings, and it's Francis on the other end. Francis tells him he's got a new black warrant, a high-priority mission that only a team like theirs can handle. Tony looks at his old man, signifying that the legend of the specialists is going to keep on going.
That suit, what's that all about?
He's got a job in San Diego.
You gonna come in?
In the world of black warrants, there's no such thing as a clean exit, only a job well done. Nick and Tony prove that when a father's experience meets a son's determination, no target is out of reach.